Let's make up more complex functions now by adding or subtracting simpler ones, or by getting a function of a function. The value of a variable may be dependent on two factors, which can be represented as two separate functions. In this example, we have f of x and g of x as our two functions, and we're asked to find the combined function, and what that combined function is equal to when x is equal to 3, and then to find the domain and range of the sum function. To find our sum function, then all we have to do is add the two functions. Next, we're asked to find what that sum function is when x equals 3, so we simply substitute x equals 3 into our equation and evaluate that out to 1 over 1 plus the square root of 4, which gives us 3. The domain of the function is a little bit trickier. Firstly, we note that the square root function is not defined when we have a negative number, so x has to be greater than or equal to -1, and we can't have x equaling 2 in the f of x function. So our domain is simply x is greater than or equal to -1, except x equals 2. We can get a new function by getting a function of a function. That means that our input value goes into one function and the output of that function goes into the second function. So we're getting g of f of x. That's called a composite function, and it's written as g-o-f, or g of f of x. And you'll note that the f of x is done first here in this notation, and then the g is done on that. In this example, we're asked to work out what g of f of x is, where the two functions f of x and g of x are given there. So what we're wanting to find out there is what g of f of x is. So that is, we want to work out what g of the square root of x is. F of x is, of course, the square root of x. So we're replacing the f of x with its function square root of x. So that means we need to work out what g of x is by putting the square root of x in place of x. And g of x is square that value and then add 1. And of course the square root of x squared is x, so we end up with the function x plus 1. So we've seen how we can get new functions by adding existing functions or subtracting them, and by composite functions where we're getting a function of a function.